Okay, so we are looking at the Britten Norman Islander in Microsoft Flight Simulator. This is also made by Blackbox, who are the same developers that have recently released the Scottish Aviation Bulldog that I did the long flight with last weekend. So, this is the Islander. It's very well modelled, and this has been available for quite some time, but Blackbox have continually updated and improved it. So when it first came out, it looked pretty much like it came straight out of FSX, but I think it's been rebuilt essentially as they've kind of evolved it and as they've learnt more about Flight Simulator. And I would actually argue now it's every bit as good as things like the Twin Otter made by Aerosoft, but I would maybe it doesn't have some of the things like putting cargo in the back and things like that. But having said that, the sound is better, and I think it actually flies a little bit better. So let's go and jump inside and see what we need to do. So the modelling is good. It's not, you know, the highest level, but that does mean you're going to get really good frame rates on lesser graphics cards. Unlike a lot of the Coronado aircraft, for example, where they've got extremely high resolution textures, but even the beefiest cards struggle with them. Okay, so this is the Islander. I'm coming into this blind, so let's see if I can get this thing up and running without really knowing what I'm doing. So we're going to move the throttles and the propellers right the way up. We're going to test that we've got good throws on the throttles, which we have, and we've got independent use of them as well. It's a twin, remember. We're also going to have a look down here, see what switches we've got. So we won't need any of these. We'll do some lights in a minute. So okay, so here's our battery master switch. So if we go in fact that's a battery isolation switch. That's not exactly what we're looking for. But then you've got generators for either side. You've got external power. And okay, so let's turn all three of these on. So this is the generators and the electric. And then look overhead. What have we got up here? So we've got the master valves for the fuel tanks. Obviously the fuel tanks are overhead in this aircraft, so you can't actually see them from here easily without me moving the view around. But so then you've got port. So the left port is left. The magnetos for the left engine. Standby magnetos, we won't be needing those. There's the starter, there's the fuel pump, fuel valve. So let's go and try it. Oh, wrong one. Well, that was trouble free. So then on this side we should just need right fuel valve on. Did I do that earlier? Or was it already on? Right fuel valve. Don't need the fuel pump necessarily, unless you're transferring fuel, I imagine, because it's gravity fed. So where are the... So starboard mags we need to turn on. Whoops. And then start the starboard side. And we have the engine up and running. Okay, so let's just make sure we're on the parking brake. Let's go and cycle the parking brake. Yep, there we go. So there's the lever for the parking brake, and we saw the pedals tip, which is perfect. Okay, let's go and switch some of this stuff on. So avionics master switch is over here, and that looks good. Yes, it took a few moments for things to boot up, but it seems to be very well simulated. So you've got RPM on the engines here. So while we're sat here with the parking brake on, we'll go and... That's good. So presumably the marker here is for cruise on the RPM gauge, but again I haven't read the instructions yet for this aircraft at all. So I'm going to press B, so the altimeter was already calibrated, it hasn't moved. We have a heading bug, so that implies there's an autopilot. Yes, we've got a normal Bendix autopilot over here, which is great. We've got nav and comm radios, we've got GPS, we've got ADF, and we've got transponder. And various switches that are inoperative by the look of it for the radios. What else have we got? The clock. Got various engine gauges like the suction. We've got fuel flow, I imagine that is. Obviously we're sat at tick over, so it's not really registering anything. And you've got oil temperatures, cylinder temperatures, and fuel pressure. So we should see when we rev the engine up, the fuel pressure should come up. And it does. And the oil pressure goes up, and the oil temperature is increasing. So I won't sit here thrashing the engines on the floor. Ignore my phone going ding. So I wonder why there's a cover over the instrument here. Interesting. Okay. Let's go and have some fun then. So let's just check outside. If we look outside, we're going to go and throw or try out all the throws out. So the ailerons look good. The rudder looks good. Elevator looks good. Okay, let's go and try that's the first position on flaps on my controller. Nothing on the second, nothing on the third. The last position. So I've got two positions on the flaps. And they actually travel quite quickly. That's good to know. Okay, so we're at Santa Barbara. There's not a breath of wind in the sky. We're on real weather. So we're going to come off the parking brake. So this aeroplane does not have reverse pitch on the propellers. Just going to get it rolling. It's castering the front tyre where I went full left. That's where it's not wanting to move. So you saw the nose wiggle there. That was just the... So it behaves quite well on the ground. It likes to be rolling before it does anything. Okay, let's just see how noisy it is. Okay, so I'm having a job speaking over it, I suspected. This plane is renowned for being noisy. So I've gone and changed my volumes to turn the simulator down a bit. And I've only revved up one engine so far. So again, yeah, this plane is well known for being one of the noisiest aeroplanes in the known universe. Okay, we're just coming round onto the runway. So we're going to fly a couple of circuits, and we're almost test flying the aeroplane, having not flown it before, so it should be interesting. So what do we have up here? We've got a binnacle compass, we've got your normal steam gauge compass down here, we've got nav. As we said, we've got the autopilot, so you could easily do, point-to-point navigation using the autopilots. And we've got the outside air temperature on a little thermometer there, which is quite cool. It's all kind of very belt and braces, but I love aircraft with, old instruments instead of the glass screens. So this is good. Okay, both engines full throttle. And first stage on the flaps. And rotate. Flaps up. I think I could have rotated a lot earlier, but seeing as it's the first flight, I wanted as much airspeed as I could get, really. So we're climbing out. If we climb out to 1,000 feet, I wonder what its climbing performance is like then. So we're climbing 1,500 feet a minute, and it's not decelerating. The airspeed's staying. So So let's go for 2,000 feet a minute and see if it can handle it. It can. This thing can climb like nobody's business. It's holding on to 100 knots, so we're just losing the vertical speed a little bit. But oh my word, so we're up to 1,000 feet already. So let's level out. So how does it handle if I pull the engines back now to cruise? Now most airplanes of this type, or aircraft of this type, you wouldn't operate on 100% on the propellers all the time. You would cruise around at about 85% on the propellers, 80%, which I've just done. So obviously you're looking, there's probably in the instructions there will be absolute numbers to get the most efficient use out of the engines, but we're not really doing that. So let's do a coordinated turn and keep the nose up. We're just dropping back down to 1,000 feet, which isn't too bad. So if we go and look on the map, see what's going on here. Doing a nice consistent turn, and we want to come back to 75 degrees. So 90, 80, 75, and level up. So if I just trim the elevators, how easily will this thing just sit in equilibrium? Obviously there's not a breath of wind today, so there's nothing to tip the plane over, but engine torque doesn't seem to be doing that either, so we're all good. I'm more like 70 degrees here. I'm going to go back to 80, so we fly along the side of the runway and not drift off towards it. Okay, so just looking at this marker here to get the aeroplane absolutely level. And there we go, so it's very, very docile, and it's flying along without really moving around too much. Having said that, it's just starting to roll, but nothing to worry about. So there you go, this is the Islander. The Britten Islander, the BN-2 is its official designation. So you find these operating all over the world. They can only carry a few passengers. If we go and look inside and turn around, you'll see how many seats there are. So there's our co-pilot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seats and some luggage. I wonder if he will disappear if we change the payload. So we've got passenger here. We've got loads of passengers showing up actually. Yeah, so he was that first payload. It's only bothering to draw one of them. But you can see this is affecting the aeroplane. It's starting to roll. I'm just going to finish off zeroing out these passenger weights because it's just me in the aeroplane really. I should have done this before I took off. Whoops. And baggage, just my bag is at the back. Oh, you can see they have actually animated that. So as we put numbers in, bags appeared. That's fine then. So okay, let's see what's happened to the aeroplane. So it started to roll gently. But it's very good, isn't it? So can we open? Yep, we can open the windows, and obviously that makes a difference to the sound. So let's push these engines out to faster. So if we push these all the way, obviously it accelerates, gains lift, it does exactly what you'd expect. So let's have a quick look at the autopilot while we're flying along. We've got heading mode, nav mode, approach mode, reverse or back course mode, and altitude hold mode, and obviously vertical speed. So typical, it's the stock autopilot you get with all of the aeroplanes in Flight Sim. So the thing that will interest me in the Britten Norman Islander is on full flaps, how slowly can it descend? Bearing in mind it doesn't have reverse pitch on the propellers. You can feather them, but you can't cut them entirely. I wonder, so we're quite high over the airfield now. So let's turn in towards the airfield and simulate a steep approach. Okay. So at 100 knots, 3,500 feet and descending gently, we're going to drop the flaps to their full range. There we go. So it would appear you can't actually descend that fast. Let's see how much it accelerates. So the engines are on idle. What about if we side slip then? So side slipping, we can just about come in, dropping at about 2,000 feet a minute without the airspeed overstressing the flaps. So we'll come in like this and we'll straighten up at the last moment and then see how it falls towards the runway. I think I'm right in saying that the Islander can do about 750 miles on a full tank of fuel, or a full filling of fuel. It's interesting, isn't it, when you're imparting this much rudder to see the aircraft going sideways like this. So we're side slipping on purpose, basically, to take advantage of the airflow hitting the fuselage to keep us slow. And we're coming down, and I'm going to stall it out onto the runway, see how slow it will go. 60 knots, it touched down at 50 knots there. I was worried about touching the tail. I don't know what the maximum rotate angle would be. Yeah, we were probably pretty near it. Obviously, if I increase the throttle, I mean, look how slow it will go, balanced. So its short field performance is going to be brilliant. You just need to be careful about climbing out, that you maintain airspeed. We're at 40 knots, look, we're right on the limit. So you're going to have to keep the nose down and use the flaps to climb. So with the nose held straight there, or held at a consistent angle, the vertical speed actually increased there. So then we can transition back into normal flight, feeding in some backstick pressure, and it looks good. And then I'm feeding the the backstick back out, and we're back to equilibrium. And I've let go now. So now we're building airspeed and the nose is coming up, so we can cut the engine back. What about a tight turn then? So if we see how tightly it can turn. Fly back along the airfield. So engine's back to 50%, or throttles I should say. It looks very good, doesn't it? There's lots and lots of liveries with it. So I think this might be the subject of the next big flight that I do. So the next live stream could well be using the Islander to go between islands somewhere. Any suggestions would be gratefully received. Guess we could go across the Caribbean or something, from island to island. Go island hopping. Okay, let's go and turn around and go land. So just bleeding some speed off as we come around the corner. As soon as we get to 80 knots I can drop the flaps. So it's very straightforward to operate, but then aircraft of this era tend to be. And as you can see, coming in low and slow is great. So you really can judge landings on short fields. So let's see, if we go for the markers on the runway, let's see how quickly we can stop, even without reverse pitch. So we're just gliding down with full flaps at about 60 knots. And about 800 feet a minute by the look of it. It was holding on to. So we're just flaring it, flaring it, flaring it. And wheel brakes. That was pretty quick, wasn't it? If we look back down the runway, we landed about there and we've only rolled about 30-40 yards maybe. Pretty impressive stuff. So let's get the flaps up and let's taxi in. Just out of interest, let's see if it's got the update for the propellers. So if I feather a propeller, yeah, it's absolutely stopped the engine. It's killed the engine completely. Yeah, you can see here, look, oil pressure's fallen off. But that does mean we can taxi in on one engine, which it should be fine with. Which for a lot of airlines is standard practice. To save fuel, you cut back to one engine for taxi. So yeah, ground handling's fine as well. You can easily follow the airfield layout, which isn't always the case in flight sim. Let's go and park down next to this. Small aircraft down here. There we go. So I'm guessing to shut it down, again having not read anything, you would follow the normal practice of pulling the mixtures back for the engines, which is going to starve them of fuel obviously, and then feather them out, and then just go and reverse what we did with the switches earlier. So the generators can come off, the battery can come off. Obviously we should have done avionics first, thinking about it. Overhead you would go and then turn the magnetos off, and the valve off for each fuel tank, and obviously the ports for the valves for the main fuel tanks were already open when we got in, so otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's very mechanical, it's very kind of gets the job done. I think the term you would use. And the modelling is actually pretty good. So, it does let us whiz through the aeroplane, so you can see the cases. So presumably you see more cases if there were more, but the actual modelling of the aircraft actually is pretty damn good. You can see the quality of it. So I've had a look around online. If you buy this directly from Blackbox, which is what I did, it's $24.95. If you get it from Aerosoft, it's €35. If you look around, the price may vary elsewhere. I always try to buy things directly from the developers, though. That's interesting. There's a manual lever there, or is that to stop the flaps travelling too far, maybe, or to hold the wing for pulling the aircraft out onto the flight line, maybe? I'm not sure. I have to read the book for that. So yeah, this is the Islander. I think it's absolutely modelled wonderfully. So there's a hell of a chrome finish on the propeller. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. So that's the Blackbox Simulations Islander, or Britten Norman Islander is its full name, the BN-2 for Flight Simulator. So if you want something to go flying in the mountains with, this would be a perfect candidate. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording there, and I'll see you again soon.